How's it going, ladies and persons? I'm Sixkilla. Welcome back to Sekimeiya. Now, we've got alternate reality Shiroya. We've got Edina back alive. We've got Mia, apparently. We haven't seen Mia yet, but apparently we've got Mia. And we've got Sai and Akito, who think that Shiroya is dead and that Edina is also dead, and that we've got some fucking magical plan to steal the Sekimeiya, like we give a shit about that. The Sekimeiya has brought us nothing but misery. Why the fuck would I want to take it home with me? I'm like, man, this misery here, I really wish I could extend this for the rest of time. Don't kill me, but hasn't it been a long time since she left? What do you think she's doing? Be quiet. Listen, she looked at me as well when she said not to follow her, so I'm being considerate by staying behind. I was just wondering if you had any idea. Sai was the least of my concerns. I barely put any thought into punching him. But before I did, I saw a conspicuous smile all over his face. It only faded momentarily, returning right after the blow. He didn't say anything, but he positioned himself back at my side. While I couldn't see him, his mere presence felt disgusting. Not a single part of me had felt able to continue reasoning out what had happened. All I knew was that the last travel had been different, and that it must have led to Sai's behaviour, having been the only affected person. Even though I felt stuck, I couldn't stop time from ticking. Every second I spent sheltering myself from reality was another I spent thinking that Shiroya might never come back. Eventually, my attempts at calming down bore some fruit. Up until then, she and I had been making our way through the events together. The version of her that had just gone up had lived things I wasn't aware of. So she should have known the following. The following along would have been a bad idea. However, what could she have gone to do? Why had she not explained it even vaguely? She had just left. She'd gone to the attic. The Sekimeiya was in the event room, so what could she have wanted to do up there? Do you remember anything else, Edina? I don't think so. I think I might have an idea about who attacked you now. Huh? I wouldn't want to get killed though. Atsuki, sorry to bother you, but who do you think it was? I don't know. Not even the slightest idea. Well, are you going to say it was Shiroya? I would never say that. However, she's the most likely suspect, isn't she? She isn't. Why the fuck is he saying that? Because she could have travelled to the past and done it? That's bullshit. How's she more suspicious than anyone else? Hey, I know it could have been anyone, but it'd be a bit strange if it wasn't her. Although I only figured you weren't guilty because I thought you wouldn't be so stupid. Does that make sense? I don't think she could have attacked her. I do. After all, that's the reason you think she couldn't have done it, using what Atsuki said as a basis. Wait, you're right. Atsuki, tell me the truth. Was that what you did? Shut the fuck up, I didn't do anything. Eden, I have a question. Did you kill Shiroya? That would explain almost everything. No, of course not. Right, I wonder, could this have worked? Every time I heard any of his words, it reinforced the thought listening to him was pointless. Not a single thing he said was making any sense or had any value. Earlier, he tried to kill us, but he refused to tell us why. After undergoing a sudden change, he was acting aggressive toward me. But it was only because he'd seen Shiroya, who he didn't remember, or thought couldn't be alive. What about Akito, who hadn't been anywhere for hours? What were they talking about regarding Edina? And how in the hell did they know about Mia? Had the Sekimeiya just created an absurd mess of events and memories? I want to know what had happened to Shiroya and everyone in this tower. Sai's behaviour toward me was miles different from how he treated me at the beginning, but he'd always operated logically. I wouldn't know what had caused the immense change, but arguing with him was impossible. There were too many things I wanted to understand. Questions hadn't stopped appearing since 9 o'clock, and each one was more complex than the last. With the little time we had left, there was no way I could be optimistic and think that everything would magically be resolved. What Shiroya and I had gotten ourselves caught up in was out of our league, so I tried to push everything that didn't directly involve us away and focus on what I most wanted to decipher. Shiroya had gone to the past with Sai, probably about 20 minutes. However, an extra version of her had already been in the tower for much longer since I'd seen her in the event room. Despite not knowing that Shiroya had lived, it was reasonable to assume that it had happened in the attic, which had been locked and out of my view. As such, she'd realised she had to go there. Wait, I'm not sure if this is strange, but it could be important. Please don't follow me. Yeah, like Sai said, she told that to everyone, but she was especially looking at me. She didn't want me to follow her. However, why would I? I can't enter the attic. She's the one who could have the key for it. The way she looked at me, it was like she was telling me that if I followed her, I could have hindered whatever she wanted to do. But she was already in hallway C. If she really wanted me not to come along, all she had to do was use the elevator to the attic and I'd have nowhere to chase her. So what does that mean? She thought I could have followed her to the attic if I just run behind her? That's the impression I get. If I'm right, that means that I can enter the attic, and she doesn't have the key for it. Incidentally, somehow, she knew it was unlocked, when I know that it wasn't just minutes ago. Sorry, but I can't keep staying here. Shiroya, maybe you've already accomplished what you wanted to do, and I won't fight you up there, but I need to find out what happened. What time is it? Is that all the time you need to give her? Let me see, it's 7:08. A recent time had gone by fast. The shutter would retract in an hour and a half, so I could only strive for a simple goal, to be with Shiroya when it happened. If you plan to go to the attic, I don't think we'll let you go alone. You can tag along all you want, I don't give a fuck. I stood up, ignoring him. He didn't hesitate to stand to, and it seemed Akudo and Edina were getting closer. Should we take the elevator? Do you have the attic key? What? Of course I don't. Just go to the 6th floor and enter it. The elevator arrived soon, after I'd called it, showing I still had been on a higher floor. When I opened the door, the other 3 each took a step forward, showing they'd come too. So are you out of your mind? You're out of your mind if you think you're getting in the same elevator as me. Back off. Gonna make me walk all the way up? Awfully rude of you. My glare extended to Akudo, who I also refused to be close to. I knew he could have overpowered me if he wanted to, but he also kept backing up the fact that Shiroya would die. So I'd fight him even if it was pointless. He shrugged and moved aside. We'll see you out there then. Hopefully we find her easily. It's fine. We'll make sure she doesn't come back down through the stairs. If we can't find her though, know that keeping quiet won't suffice. I didn't look at Edina, as I had nothing against her. She entered beside me, looking just as lost as usual. When the door closed, I pressed the floor 6 button and waited for the elevator to begin moving. We'd arrived faster than the other 2, but I wasn't sure if we were going to find anything. Sai had mentioned that the attic door would be open, so I might have been the one to leave it like that, if I could actually trust anything he said. Edina was at my side next to the buttons. While I was leaning back against the opposite side, more questions than I thought might have surrounded her existence. But it was no time to think about them. For some reason though, she had reined in her hostility towards me. What the fuck? What just happened? The elevator stopped abruptly. It couldn't have been going too fast, but as it ceased all movement, it propelled us upward, and we slammed into the floor. I felt my right hand burning. I looked at it and saw a cut. What? You're bleeding? I could only process the intense pain coming from my wound. While I couldn't comprehend how it had happened, I understood that I'd cut my hand with the handrail as our bodies lifted. It had been right above me. Blood poured out and pain poured in equally. Overwhelmed, Edina tried to open the door. Well, we stopped on the 3rd floor. I lived the situation already. Had we been intercepted again? The vast amount of blood leaving my body prevented me from thinking about it, and instead, I started to feel disoriented. Nobody's here. I didn't press the button either. We need to stop the bleeding. We could use something from the attic. No way, it hurts too much. Fuck. It wasn't too deep of a wound, but the bleeding would take a while to stop. I would pass out from it, so all I could think of was the intense pain. I wouldn't pass out from it. However, the one thought came to me was what I needed. I had to get rid of the wound. It hurt way too much to spend the entire remaining time without medical assistance, and I needed to have a clear mind. I could accomplish that. I only had to travel back in time. Perhaps the pain blinded me, but without a second thought I dragged the door inward and pressed the button to go back to the 1st floor. What are you... Her voice cut off, and I began descending. It was fine. I'd only take a detour. After I got rid of the ridiculous pain that wouldn't let me think properly for a long time to come, I'd go up and find Shiroya. I could even go earlier. The single requirement was the Sekimeiya. I had to activate it and replicate an earlier position of myself without the wound, retrieving all of my lost blood in the process. I had to do it quickly so there wouldn't be many possible locations to replicate after the wound. The doors opened, so I dashed out of the elevator as fast as I could, forcing my eyes to shut to suppress the pain. I ran to the event room, a fair amount of blood dripping off my hand. I knew I'd have to wait a few minutes to activate it, but that was necessary. However, since I clearly didn't know much about how the replicated location worked, I could only hope it would actually work. I felt the room was a bit colder than before. I uncovered the curtain. Why? It wasn't there behind the glass. There was only a crimson cushion, and the glass wasn't fully shut, which cooled my face while I stared in denial. Fuck, do I have to search for it? Sai, Akudo, even Shiroya, they all could have taken it. It was alright, I tried to tell myself. I could have had to wait a few minutes before activating it, since someone had gotten it out of the cabinet for me. I'd just have to spend that time searching for it, as the energy would already be starting to be stored. But desperately searching by myself sounded ridiculous. I wouldn't stop losing blood anytime soon, making me more and more tired. If the pain refused to fade, there was no way I'd be able to tolerate it until 9 o'clock on top of everything that was going on. I closed the glass and nervously stepped into hallway B, where I still found no trace of anyone. Slowly I began to perceive two things. The strange smell smelled very strong and prominent. I wasn't sure that meant anything, since I still didn't know where it was coming from, or what it signified, but that time, it felt more noticeable than it had on previous occasions. The second thing was a thought. I knew I must have looked like Edna had, so I found myself suddenly coming back to something she'd recently said. That's nonsense, I'm going to the past, so I'll prevent Isla from dying. She completely refused Sai's claim that the past couldn't be changed. My mind might have been clouded, but I started to doubt my past conclusions, feeling that Edna's words might have held some weight. I wanted to go to the past, so what if I changed it? Would the universe really not allow it? I'd been working under that assumption, but that thought was what had become ridiculous. If I actively wanted to change the past, there was no way I couldn't do it, and I didn't particularly mind trying it. Exactly, like I've been saying the entire game. You just assume that that's how it is, and you've never fucking tried. I entered the cleaning room and scanned it with my eyes. How would the universe stop me from changing what had been decided? I wanted to figure out. Many things around me pointed to the fact that Shiroya would die at one point, and even though she was alive, she'd left me in the dark on purpose. If I could deviate from that reality, I would. Fortunately, finding out if it was possible felt fairly easy. I looked at the crystal room B6, but the sheer number of cabinets was dizzying. I didn't have the strength to inspect all of them, so I backed off toward the staff room. When my mentality hadn't been to alter the past, everything had played out as I'd once lived it. I wanted to see what would happen if I consciously attempted to alter the past through my actions. I already tried it once, but how could Sai and Arkado's words make any sense? Weren't their realities completely different from mine? Had they travelled in time and morphed the events they remembered? Was that why the effect had only worked on them, while the reality I knew was completely different to theirs? I couldn't tell if I was deluding myself or somehow not making sense, but I felt like I must have been able to change the past, and that it had happened to other people, while we'd coexisted in a single timeline. What would the point of time travel be anyway if nothing of consequence could come of it? Perhaps it would complicate it all even further, shaping everything into a more incomprehensible mess, but why would I care about that? I've been able to change things anyway, if that were the case. Not attempting it was stupid. I could only open 2 lockers, so the task was far more bearable than checking inside every cabinet. I was already staggering, so I had little hope of finding the Sekimeiya before I couldn't continue. I opened Naomi's locker, but the Sekimeiya wasn't inside. The other one was locked, so I took out the key and unlocked it. In the top compartment was the Sekimeiya. I don't care how strange that was. Had it teleported back? How could I know? I only wanted to use it so I could think straight once again. As I was holding the key with my left hand, I extended my right one, mixing the pain of the wound with a burn that had made my sight warp. I was at the start of hallway B, looking towards C. Huh? What? I stared at my hand. The wound was still there, but next to no blood was pouring out of it, and it didn't hurt as much. I saw the scar that it had left though, which would likely persist for many days. Furthermore, I felt very tired, but my mind was clearer. How's this possible? Why do I still have the wound? What time even is it? I began to walk toward the event room to check the time, but voices stopped me. I got close to the door and focused my hearing. Just suddenly ran it. Honestly, I wasn't sure. I recognized the conversation. I'd arrived approximately a couple of minutes before the point only Sai had travelled. To interrupt it, did you all... I retreated and went to hallway A through the lobby. The computer screens were still lit, so I walked up to them to check the exact time, trying to avoid the blood on the floor. 6:54, precisely what I'd estimated. For a short time at least, I could try to experiment and gain some form of knowledge, no matter how small. Feeling like I could trust my judgment a bit better than before, I stepped out and went over what I'd been thinking. What if I open the door to the event room? It's completely in reach, and if I do it, I'll be changing the past. I was intrigued. I had to accept that nothing made sense to me. Given what I'd deduced, I shouldn't have kept the wound. I knew I was operating under many misconceptions. If I tried to change the past, the result could have pointed me toward a more accurate direction. But it was scary. Did paradoxes exist? Would the world crumble if I changed what I'd already experienced? Perhaps the universe was pressuring me into accepting what had already been decided, but I didn't feel like the pressure was strong enough. I could just make any change. And what if what I felt was preventing it was only myself? However, I didn't want to go too many steps up. Perhaps I could change the past if I really wanted to, but what if I altered my own past actions? I'd never end up travelling, so to think that my existence could immediately be overwritten wasn't a ridiculous bet. How could I attempt to change the past while making sure that I could still end up travelling in the same way? In a few minutes, Sai will appear in hallway B from the lobby, while Arkado will suddenly show up from hallway A through the event room. Preventing their arrivals could still be a big change, that might deny my travel from occurring. But the more I thought about it, the more I realised I had nothing else to alter that I could be sure of that had definitely changed. It was very reckless, but I wanted to try it nonetheless. I wanted to understand what had happened to Shidoya and to all of us. And although it sounded very dangerous in theory, I felt no risk in play. The thought of one of my harmless actions freezing or eradicating the universe simply didn't seem right. So, I had an idea. A sound. To start it off, I could produce a loud sound I knew I hadn't heard. If I managed to make it happen, the past could be changed. I walked up to the storeroom so I'd be able to flee. I still didn't want my past self to see me, as the chances of a paradox occurring would certainly increase if that happened, and the single thing I wanted to know was whether reality could be reshaped. I twisted the knob on the door and pushed it open. It was fully in my reach, so I could slam the door and originate a considerably loud sound that hadn't previously existed. Was the universe about to black out? I'd shortly find out, as I really intended to do it. I was using my left hand, since the right one still hurt. Perhaps the impact wouldn't be as strong. There was no way it would be heard throughout the entire floor. I remembered Sai's words in the event room. The past can't be changed. You got into the same conclusion, but had he tried it himself? There was no way to be certain without attempting it. Am I making too big a deal out of this? I'm just going to make a sound. I was hesitating. Was it the universe's prediction? That no sound would be heard? Feeling controlled, I moved my arm without thinking. There, that's it. This is a new noise, one that we didn't hear. I had to run away. The world hadn't frozen, and I was still alive. However, all that meant was that my existence was not a paradox. Letting my past self see me, an inherent problem. He'd know he'd end up travelling and doing what he'd seen, cancelling out the freedom of my own actions. However, that wasn't necessarily the case anymore, as the past version that could see me wouldn't be me anymore. He would be one who had heard a sound I'd never experienced, so he might not have ended up travelling like I had. I ran toward the stairs and quickly disappeared from view. I hadn't edited my memories at all. I still remembered the reality in which no sound had played. I considered how that could turn into a big problem. I could have created a reality in which two versions of myself existed permanently. If I separated myself from my past version who was on the crystal floor, he would never travel and leave his place for me to occupy, like what had been happening so far. To understand every consequence, I'd have to wait. However, I'd already learnt the most important piece of information. The past could be changed if I wanted it to. If changing the events wasn't my intention though, a travel would result in the previous lived reality. I felt a piercing pain and looked at my hand. Running with clenched fists slightly opened the wound, and a small amount of blood was dribbling out. If I left some behind, I could have made a trail to find my whereabouts. I looked at the staircase and saw very little blood. The stronger pain was coming back, so I had to cover the wound. I couldn't go back down and use a curtain, and dirtying the attic's clothes might have been a bad idea. Instead, I entered the bathroom at my side, since I figured a few layers of toilet paper would suffice for a bit of blood. So the blood we kept finding on the ground was our own. Interesting. Toilet paper was far from appropriate or hygienic to cover wounds, but I had to use what I had at my disposal. I kept adding layers until no more blood could be seen. It took a while, but I managed to make it work. I should probably stay here. I don't know if the sound I made was enough to cause a search on the crystal floor, but if it was, they'll find me no matter where I go. Hopefully it didn't trigger one. However, it's possible Shidoya would still suddenly go up, so if I pay attention, I'll hear whether she uses the elevator or goes on foot. I'm not sure I want to stop her, but I want to know what she went to do. I waited after sitting down and slightly opening the door. It wasn't open enough to see outside, but I hoped I'd hear footsteps through the gap. I put my hand in my pocket. I wanted to get rid of the note through the toilet. Strangely, I couldn't find it. It wasn't there, but I hadn't gotten rid of it. I checked all my pockets, but the note was gone. I didn't drop it anywhere, did I? That must mean I didn't appear with it when I travelled. Why though? It was so strange. At least it must have dematerialized for good. Going off what I'd lived, Shidoya should have gone up in 2 or 3 minutes, but I had no guarantee that would repeat. It did not. 5 minutes later, the elevator hadn't been used and nobody had gone up or down the stairs. That was proof of my change. I could change the past. I didn't blame myself for having wrongly assumed the opposite for so long, but I'd proved that if I wanted to, and was conscious of what I was doing, I could decide to alter history. To finally know with certainty was both terrifying and exhilarating. Less than 2 hours remained until 9 o'clock. The alarm had gone off at about 9:05, so 12 hours later, the exit would unlock. Was it enough to try and put things into practice? I still didn't know what the consequences would truly come out of my change. Would I permanently have differing memories from the people around me? Would I have to coexist with another Atsuki? As soon as I found out, making use of time travel would become simple. Suddenly, I was presented with a dilemma. 2 hours remain until the front door presumably opens. In about 30 minutes is when I travel to the past. But that might not happen anymore. This means that I could be able to let the Sekimeiya gather power until 9:05. I'm not sure how far I'd go back. Leaving the Sekimeiya out of the cabinet 15 minutes resulted in 20 minutes travelled. Just now I went back a little over 40, but I don't know how long the Sekimeiya was in the locker. It shouldn't have been there to begin with, meaning that I have no clue how much distance travelled advances each minute out of the cabinet. If it goes at a consistent rate, 2 hours would make me travel incredibly far back. As it stands, I wouldn't appear 2 weeks ago. But what if I did somehow? What if I could save Miya this way and prevent that entire thing? Would another Atsuki get to live a carefree and ignorant life unaware of today's events, while I still had to exist? I had to understand how it worked before thinking of applications. If I did something like that, I'd leave behind everything that had happened. That included the note I'd found, Shiroya's strange behaviour, and everything I'd been attempting to reason out. Of course, the result would more than justify it. I went back to a distant thought. Could it be that the shutter wasn't going to move at 9 o'clock, so that the Sekimeiya would store enough time to grant a lengthy travel? How would that be accomplished? I was thinking about making the recording a reality, just because I'd heard it. But I wouldn't complain about the origin of events if I could achieve it. However, I still understood too little about the Sekimeiya to consider anything like that. Could I know that waiting a month would be enough just because that had been the time I'd heard in the recording? I'll let go of that idea. To begin with, I had no way of prolonging our stay. And as I'd previously considered, we couldn't survive for that long without food. Despite my important discovery, the recording still made no sense. In reality, not many things did. I could run down through the events to find continuous unexplained mysteries. Had someone been changing reality around us, resulting in inconsistent memories and different pasts? That felt too overwhelming to consider, and there was virtually no way to know if that had happened. The replicated location, the self-teleportation of the Sekimeiya, there were many unknown factors, needed to construct a sound plan that involved changing the past. I kept waiting, as I wanted to surpass the point I travelled from. Minutes later, I thought that going up might have been a good idea. Someone had to have intercepted our elevator trip on the 3rd floor, and it was very possible my change downstairs hadn't influenced their actions at all, and if I went up, maybe I'd see them. I saw the blood had stopped coming out of my wound, so I removed the toilet paper and flushed it away. The sensation was very uncomfortable, but it didn't hurt too much. I still wasn't sure how I'd managed to injure myself like that, but if I didn't make abrupt motions with my arm, I could tolerate it easily. I walked up to the 3rd floor. There was nobody in sight, so I wanted to hide. It was possible that they would flee if they saw me, meaning that I'd have to approach them when I knew that they'd be closer to the elevator. I entered the second partition as I figured a few minutes later. We're left until the time we'd be intercepted. It had been the lower bathroom. I'd been in the lower bathroom for about 20 minutes, so I have to wait a little more. Unfortunately, since it was very unlikely Eden and I would still take the elevator at the same time, I wouldn't have a way to know if I'd exceeded the time. And once again, while time kept passing, the silence gave no hints of the ticking seconds. I waited minutes, moving back and forth between the second and third partitions, waiting for my cue to get out. It wasn't coming. Would I hear their movements if someone was nearby? I felt I was really close to the time we'd been stopped on that floor. I left the partitions. The corridor leading to the elevator was empty. I kept staring at it, but I felt no trace of life. Had the impact of my action on the crystal floor been enough to remove the existence of whoever had initially intercepted us? I turned around and peeked at the opposite hallway, with the stairs leading to floor 2. I felt no difference. If nobody was around, would I have to present myself downstairs and explain what I'd done? Huh? The elevator. I ran back and saw something I thought I couldn't see. That's me. And Edina as well. I remember those movements. From a distance I heard my own yells and saw blood pouring out of my hand. It was repeating. Despite what I'd done, the scene played out just like I remembered it. I backed off, knowing Edina would turn around and see an empty corridor. Then abruptly, my past self closed himself in the elevator and left her outside, puzzled. How's this possible? I know it was a small change, but how is it possible it all still led to this occurring, just like I remember? I stepped out, my footsteps alerting Edina. What? Atsuki? I waved awkwardly and approached her. It's not bleeding anymore. What'd you do? I used the Sekimeiya to travel to the past, and this time it worked. I wanted to get rid of the wound, but it simply stopped bleeding, even though I'm not sure why. Wait, what? There's no way. No way what, exactly? That I travelled through time? Yes, how'd you do it? I touched on the Sekimeiya, what's wrong? Nothing, I'm just a bit confused. Ignore me. I'm happy the wound got better. I was a bit taken aback by her words. Was she the exact same Edina I remembered? Do you understand now why we stopped on this floor? Sorry, I don't. Are you sure you didn't hit the button accidentally? Yes. Should we keep going up? Hang on, what do you remember? Earlier, did we hear a loud door being slammed coming from hallway A? When exactly? About 35 minutes ago. I don't know. My head's still a bit foggy, but I don't remember that. Why are you asking though? Did we hear it? I'm not sure, we must have. It was very strange. Why should Oya have gone up, but we still ended up using the elevator? Not gone up, but we'd still use the elevator to follow her. Did Edina not remember the sound because she hadn't heard it, or because of her state of mind? Had realities converged? Let's wait a second. Sai and Arcado should be coming, right? That's what they said. I wanted to talk to them. Well, that always goes well. She looked uncertain, but she didn't complain. I began to walk in circles, wondering what to make of this strange result. A minute later, nobody had come. It had been enough time for Sai and Arcado to arrive at the 3rd floor. Wait here, I'll be back in a second. What? Explaining myself would have been a waste of time, especially considering the state she was in. I circled down the floors until I arrived at the last staircase, not seeing anyone along the way. Oh, it's you. Through the grey door I saw Sai. He didn't receive me with clear hostility, so I went down the staircase. Where's Arcado? Hell if I know, why? Was that the result of my action? Arcado had come from hallway A, where I'd made the sound, and that made him not appear? Are you alone? Eden is above us, yeah. By the way, about 35 minutes ago, did you hear the sound of a door closing coming from hallway A? What? What kind of question is that? Just answer, did you? Yes, why? Something caught my attention. On the floor of hallway C, there were new drops of blood close to drying. Do you recognize these drops? Have they always been here? Oh yeah, I saw them before. Are they from that wound? What happened? When Edina and I took the elevator, those drops hadn't existed. There were too many of them to think that I hadn't seen them. So I was definitely living in the reality I'd changed, but I wasn't sure the same could be said for Edina. I knew that that was my blood, and that I'd left it behind when I'd run away from after slamming the door. As soon as I psyched myself up to alter the past, all my actions must have been allowed to differ from what I'd experienced, including unconscious ones such as leaving blood behind. I looked next to us, and as I thought, the other trail of blood was coming from the elevator. It was from the time I'd gone down, after suffering the injury. The floor was proof of both realities at once. Are you just not going to answer me? Where's Shiroya, by the way? Is she in the attic? Why would she be? What's with these questions? She's not with you, so I figured she might have ended up in an unreachable place. Oh right, the attic is locked, isn't it? It was just a bit ago. But you have the key. That's how you entered it when you were chasing us. Excuse me, I don't have the key, no. You can search me if you want, I don't have it. It was all too confusing. Sai had suddenly undergone yet another change of behaviour, and just like the previous ones, I couldn't make sense of it. Additionally, it had all become a mess to work out, like I'd feared. I couldn't discern what I'd changed and what I hadn't. Is there no one else on the crystal floor? There shouldn't be. Let's go up then. Shiroya might actually be in the attic. He shrugged and followed me up. On the way we found Edina, who'd been waiting for my return. She didn't welcome us, and I thought that her eyes looked even more empty than before. She didn't reply to Sai's carefree greeting, opting to silently follow us. 3 floors above was the attic's door. I told you it's locked. Do you not have the key? No, it's possible Shiroya does. Maybe she locked herself inside then. I remember what I concluded earlier. Had I been wrong? And I couldn't have followed her to the attic? No matter what, I felt like Sai had to be lying. He'd unlocked the door previously to chase us. Like we'd thought, he could have accomplished it by travelling inside and unlocking the door with our key, but since we'd found it on the floor, it was very likely another one had been used. If he was telling the truth, I thought that perhaps someone else had entered the attic while Sai had waited downstairs to ambush us. Hey Shiroya, are you inside? Why would you lock yourself in like this? Is he just fucking around while he knew where the key was? Even if Shiroya was inside though, why would she have chosen to stay hidden? Because she was gonna die? She's fated to die? I'd stay hidden too. Do what you said earlier and show me your pockets. Do you not trust me? I suppose I almost killed you. Sure. Huh? I'm just kidding, of course. Anyway, you can see all my pockets are empty. I sighed and did what I'd done in the bedroom. I felt his clothes until I could be sure that he wasn't hiding anything. Are you sure she couldn't be anywhere else? We haven't searched the whole building, no, but she should still be here. And she must be hiding intentionally, and there's nothing we can do about that. Maybe she'll come out eventually. Let's go back down for now. I agree. She must not like you very much and prefers to be alone. Wait, no, you're definitely lying. Me? I don't ever lie. You don't have any key on you. That proves you hid them, because you should have had the cabinet key. The Sekimeiya cabinet, why would I? It's in your hand before you and Shiroya travelled. Strangely though, I don't have it. Check your sight too when you go check your hearing. Before I could reply, the three of us were looking at the door. The lock clicked, the doorknob turned, and it began to open. You're alright. From the other side of the door, Shiroya breathed a deep sigh of relief, looking at my eyes. Then she began to pant in exhaustion. It's our Shiroya. She's back. Oh, she was actually inside. I'm glad we found you. What? He locked me in here. What? Me? That's funny. I locked you in, but the key's in the keyhole, right? It was her, not the Shiroya who'd mysteriously chosen to leave by herself, but the one I'd been with the entire time. She had normal clothes, very slightly stained with smoke, and still looked at me, glad to see me again. Was he acting like he wanted to find me? He locked me in the bedroom. I'm sorry? I've been here for almost 2 hours. He shut me in. So you chose to stay in the attic and want to blame me for it. Why exactly? Are you okay? She hadn't stopped panting and her voice was hoarse. Yes, I just ran from the bedroom. I'm fine. You're saying I locked you in a bedroom, but I'm not sure why I would even do that. But how did you leave? With the key. But I thought I trapped you there. Yes, but not with the key. I know what you did. I became a witch and learned magic, huh? We can go with that if you don't want to tell me the truth. Wait, Edina? Huh? You're alive? Yes. I'm sorry if this sounds strange, but are you the same Shiroya who disappeared from the event room with Sai? Yeah, I've been here ever since. I see. I still didn't understand anything, but I was happy to be reunited with who I thought was as the real Shiroya. The other version of her was the one who disappeared again, and she had told me that she was the same person. How she would come to exist, though, that I didn't know. We didn't check Edina's pulse, remember? Oh, thank God, and sorry. What's with the blood, though? I don't know, I got hit in the head, so my memories are a little fuzzy. Oh, what time is it? It's 7:40. It's so late. What happened while I was here? And your watch is working again? Huh? Yeah, of course. I almost felt at peace. I changed reality in some way, but Shiroya, who'd been in the attic, hadn't been affected. She remembered all we'd done, and we'd be able to reach the end of the countdown together. Wait, what's with your clothes? You were wearing different ones. Right, when we went to the past, we lost track of that Shiroya, but she still has to be around. I'm confused though. Where did she come from? What? When we went to the past, I see. He was the only one to travel, but he thinks we all did. He thinks we all appeared separately in the past and that we've been unable to find Shiroya since then. I'm not completely sure why, that would be his assumption though. However, one thing is strange. Sai's watch reads 7:40, and I'm pretty sure it's the real time. That must mean he synced it properly. Can you come with me for a second? Yeah. Can't you just talk openly here? I ignored him and brought Shiroya one floor down. Alright, we need to wrap this one up here because we're out of time for today. But I'm glad to have Shiroya back at least, and Edina. It's nice to have Edina back as well. I liked her. For the most part, although she seems a bit dazed. I mean, shit ain't going very well for her, let's be honest, so I can't really blame her, but who knows what's going to happen next, I guess. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.